definitely had experience at that, with General Hospital and changing the perspective that the viewer has on this story. And talk about why you had that idea and evolved.
General Hospital. Well, I think we have these tacit understandings about the hierarchy of entertainment and what has, different, what has more value than others. And so generally, I think, soap operas were considered like a kind of lower form of entertainment than, primetime television, and then that was beneath film. But I wanted to try this experiment, and so normally, like, you expect like an actor's trajectory to maybe start on a soap opera and then move off to somewhere else, to movies or whatnot. And I was already established as a film actor at the time that and then I went on General Hospital sort of as an experiment, and not to make fun of it or anything, just to kind of put myself in their hands and to see what would happen. And then they named the character Franco, so it was even more sort of meta, and it was kind of underlining the fact that I didn't really belong there. Like, it was like a big headline, like, his name is Franco, like, we're gonna pull you out of it even more, and then while I was doing General Hospital, I was nominated for an Oscar, so it was like even more this sort of weird clash of, perceived high culture and I guess low culture, and then it culminated in a project at the Museum of Contemporary Art where we filmed a special episode of General Hospital at the museum, and then I filmed the filming of it, and that became another movie, and it was just like, the Ouroboros sort of snake eating its tail kind of weirdness.
Where do you see your creativity playing in this world of VR?
Not this year, but at the previous Sundance Film Festival, there was a whole exhibit of virtual reality shorts, and they were incredible. I had the holy shit moment, I guess, about it several times. And they were all different, Some, I think, walking across the Himalayas, and there wasn't much narrative to it. One, I think there was like a war zone in the Middle East, and you sort of immersed in it as a journalist. One was pure fantasy, like a train sort of flying through the air, I think. And then one that was terrifying. I think they had it, and they also hadn't, I think, perfected the way that you interacted with the virtual environment, because everybody got really sick from motion sickness. It was like at a frat party, and it was terrifying, because it was like you got to see two perspectives of this date rape. It was horrifying. And they said oh, you're supposed to get woozy at the end, but I think it's just because they hadn't mastered it yet. And so I was so intrigued, by the possibilities, and like any sort of technical advancement in filmmaking or whatever, it's also scary to a lot of people when movies suddenly added sound. Everybody that was used to making silent films and had perfected that art suddenly, got really scared about this new technology. But and then on the other hand, there's the people that are trying to push that forward because it is kind of the new way, and also audiences are interested in that. So I think it's both scary because I've been used to making films in a certain way, but the way that it opens up, you know, new possibilities is also really exciting. So I've tried to kind of train myself to be open to the new possibilities and to sort of find a way in there. Right now, it seems a little like he's maybe the pioneer that, like, I feel like maybe it's not my time to kind of jump in and figure it out. Like, sounds like there's a lot of kinks to still be worked out, but at a certain point, like, I would, you know, it's a world that I think would be, you know, full of a lot of potential.
Well, if you ever want to do something, let us know.
Okay.
When you're 95 years old and you're looking back on your life, what do you want the world to remember you for?
I'm thinking about what one of my friends told me that, I'm probably getting this wrong, but there was a nun that I think worked in a hospital or something, and was kind of aiding people at the end of their lives, and she asked them, you know, a similar question, I guess, and one of the things you kept hearing, usually from men, was like, I wish that I had spent more time with my family, and you know, that those were the important moments, and I didn't cherish those enough. So I keep thinking about that, but then in my life, I don't, you know, I love my family, my parents, you know, my brothers and my mother, but I don't have my own family, and I guess people would describe me as a workaholic or that kind of thing. So that's in the back of my mind, but my actions are, you know, otherwise, and I think it's okay. You know, if I reflect on my life, I'm very happy. I'm fortunate that I get to, you know, do the things that I love, and it's sort of kind of what I could, you know, ask for, whatever that adds up to as, you know, kind of what people remember or not. I don't know. I don't really have that much control over it, but I do sort of have control over what I, you know, spend my time on, and you know, and how hard I work at it, and that's kind of it. What, you know, what other people think of it is really kind of out of my control.
So you're 37 years old, over 100 acting roles. How many master's degrees do you have now?
It sounds silly when I say it. It just sounds like sounds like I got like a bunch of candy. You know,
Is it 3?
degrees or something. No, I have more, but we don't.
Okay. Working on a PhD. I mean, the energy, and then on top of all of that, you are coming up here every month to work with students and spend your time volunteering to take the next generation of youth down a path of creating stories. Every month, line yourself up here to do that. Why?
Well, I started teaching in master's programs, graduate filmmaking at NYU, and now I teach at UCLA and USC. And that was an amazing experience because, you know, in the movie business is hard. You know, it's hard to break in, and so inevitably you have to sort of spend a lot of time working on yourself and fighting for a way in. And so as soon as I started teaching, it like provided a relief. You know, I didn't have to think about myself for a little while, and more than that, you know, it was so inspiring to work with, you know, these talented, you know, people, and to work with people that were still kind of very pure about what they were doing. They still had a, you know, a very pure love for filmmaking, and that was inspiring, and got me, you know, to fall in love with, you know, filmmaking again, and remember all the reasons I got into it. And so, and then I also thought about when I was in film school, but then even when I was in college, like, what are the classes that I wish I had had? And the classes that I had, how maybe would I have wanted those classes to be taught? And then I was able to kind of create those classes and do it in those ways that I would have wanted. And so then I looked back to my high school experience and like, well, what class would I have loved to have had when I was in high school? And I just sort of thought, and then I thought, you know what? Nowadays, the kids are all using this technology. They are making videos and sending them to each other, and they are, you know, telling their own kind of mini stories in this way already. But the schools aren't necessarily sort of engaging with that. They're, you know, some are, but you know, in a lot of ways we are still kind of stuck in these kind of old ways of doing things. So why not have a class that sort of acknowledges that where the kids are already there, they're already doing it. So why not just sort of aid them to kind of take those skills just to the next level? And it seems like a kind of worthy enterprise. So yeah. So I teamed up with Mrs. Wojcicki, we call her Waj, my old teacher, and we made it happen.
Tell us some of the stories that you've been involved with, sharing with the world, either something you've written or a favorite role that you had, or maybe it was a work that one of your students was working on that was really inspiring for you, and that story needed to be told.
I mean, there's lots. You know, I do a lot of projects, and that's partly because there are so many, you know, different stories and things that I want to engage with. I found that for me as a filmmaker and a storyteller, a lot of the times what I find most inspiring and fruitful is when I adapt, you know, a project from, you know, a novel or, you know, something that's previously written and adapted into another medium, usually a film. To me, that is, you know, it's a sort of a different kind of storytelling. It's a collaborative kind of storytelling. It's, you know, taking the work of a master in a lot of cases, like William Faulkner or something like that, and translating it into another medium, so that, and what happens is people will, you know, it can be a very similar story. You know, I usually try to be loyal to the source I'm adapting, but people are experiencing it in a different way, and sort of kind of what we're talking about here, like, you know, if you could do, you know, I'm sure, you know, down the road there'll be, you know, virtual reality stories. You could, you know, do the Citizen Kane, you know, story in virtual reality, but if so, we'll experience it in a completely different way. It will be the same story, but the way that we're engaged with it, the way that it affects us, will be completely different. Just the same way that if you just read, you know, if you read the novelization of Citizen Kane, it would be a different experience than, you know, watching the film. That's one of the things that moves me and inspires me is kind of this, you know, the adaptation process and seeing how these great stories work in these different mediums.